Welcome to the Great Awokening. I'm your host, Josh Daws. My guest today is Michael Clary. He is a pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio, whose church is putting on a conference next month called the King's Domain Conference, which is going to be about the need for clear speech in a confused age. I'm honored to have been invited to speak at this conference, so I wanted to have Michael on to talk about the conference, why he felt that there was a need to encourage the church to speak clear in this confused age. And I think it's going to be a really great event. And so I'll have some information at the end of the podcast on how you can sign up, register for the conference, and more details. But before that, let's jump right into my conversation with Michael. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So for our listeners, why don't you give us a short rundown of who you are and why you decided to put on this conference?
Name is Michael Clary, and I am a church planting pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio for the last 15 years. The church we started was in 2010. I'm counting in that 15 years, the 2 years of prep work of gathering a core group. So 2010 was our launch date. So I've started the church in the neutral world using Aaron Wren's framework of when the culture was more hospitable to the Christian faith, and being a Christian was at least a welcome amidst all the different ideas. And yet during that period of time of my church's history, I was able to experience in real time, watch it play out in my congregation, this shift into the negative world where there is a need for us to be more plain spoken, more clear, because there's a pressure on us to water down the message. Mm-hmm. And no matter what we say, it seems like if you speak truth clearly, you're going to be a bigot, you're going to be a hater, you're going to be this awful person. And so given my personal history, the circumstances within my church and things I observe here, and observation of cultural trends and listening to other thought leaders on this, I was thinking there is a need for other pastors, ministry leaders, Christians that are interested in this to have some way to connect with each other, because we're having a similar experience, and that we want to be kind. We believe in the fruit of the Spirit. We want to speak persuasively, but we don't want to hold back on what's true. And yet we have this experience of being regarded as hateful or bigoted. And so it's kind of maddening to experience this. So I thought this is a good time to talk about this and have some other people that I have watched and listened to and benefited from their material. I know that have the value of plain speech. Let's bring us together and put on a conference and have a chance to learn from each other, and do that with whoever comes and attends with us. So that was the big idea.
Yeah, well, I'm honored that you invited me to come speak. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's very needed in the church today. I think we were talking a little before. I think we have very similar stories in kind of really embracing a lot of the missional, winsome ministry model that, if we're just kind enough, if we're just, present the gospel in a way that, softens the rough edges, then, we'll gain a hearing, that the world will want to, know what we're about, know what we hear. And, like you said, just in the last, 10 years or so, it's really taken a turn where no matter how winsome you are, if you're not fully affirming, if you're not fully embracing kind of the world's moral framework, you're gonna be receive that kind of that hostile pushback of negative world where you're a bigot, you're hateful. And the church is really, I think, struggling to adjust to that, this new kind of paradigm we find ourselves in. And a lot of people are doubling down on the winsomeness that, okay, we just weren't nice enough. Let's, what else can we
Yeah.
What other rough edges can we kind of shave down? And yeah, there's just a lot to that. What in your experience, in particular, have you seen uh, the people in your church struggling with, where this, you find that need for clarity and discipleship on this?
So if we rewind about 2.5 years ago, I believe it was September or August of 2021, I believe, I did a sermon series on unity in the church. And one of the subjects I wanted to address was big in the news, critical race theory. And I thought this is something where I've seen people in my church get kind of bullied into acting acting in certain ways or speaking in certain ways to show that they're a friend to racial minorities and that sort of thing, but they're doing so in a way that is buying into a worldview that was concerning to me. And I didn't think that they were fully in the worldview, but there were some signs that were concerning to me. So I preached a sermon on it, knowing that it would ruffle feathers. And I spent more time preparing that sermon than maybe any other sermon I'd ever prepared. Um, and going into that Sunday morning, I felt great. I was thinking, I've really found a way to communicate urgently needed important truths in a very winsome way, in a way that is not bombastic, is not flamethrower rhetoric. It is reasonable, measured. Um, and after I preached the sermon, I received two really strangely conflicting types of feedback. I heard more positive feedback on that sermon than I've ever heard. And I've like literally people writing me handwritten notes telling me I've always wondered about this. I've not been able to understand how this all fits together, and you really helped to see these dots connected. And what I did was I used a lot of Neil Shenvi's framework for just
Hmm.
here are the essential themes, and I said, hey, Neil Shenvi's been very helpful. Let's look at this. He wrote on the Gospel Coalition, which was a trusted source for a lot of these folks. So the people that were encouraged by it, I heard, please give us more. We need to hear more about this. Please keep doing this. At the same time, I heard from a handful of people extremely negative feedback that was like, you sound partisan. You're pushing Republican talking points. This sounds like Fox News. This that really was confusing or not helpful for people. And that what that did was that set off about a year or so, year and a half of a lot of discussion and conflict within our church that um, that really highlighted for me that the issue is not the tone. The issue is not that I was not being winsome or that I was being harsh. The issue was they did not like the content. They did not want to be confronted with difficult truths, or they wanted to didn't want to acknowledge that there were the negative world idea that was rejected out of hand by many of them. That just
Hmm.
that the church has always been in exile. The church has always had problems without acknowledging the unique situation that we're in. And so it was that made it clear to me that it's not what we talk about winsome, and that's top layer, but underneath that top layer, it's not about winsomeness at all. It's about content. But what are the things we're actually saying? And if you say a difficult truth in the most winsome way, which I did in that one message, the most winsome, approachable way, it's going to elicit a strong reaction. So what that did for me was it it made me realize that there's no amount of winsomeness I can smother onto any given topic or message that's going to appease people who are opposed to the message.
Hmm.
And at the same time, winsomeness itself is like a distortion field that alters the message, because there are some things that need more urgency, even within speaking with kindness, gentleness, as the scriptures admonish us to. Some things do require a special amount of urgency. Um, and so I just decided this isn't going to work if winsomeness is our framework, because
Hmm.
we have I have a flock that needs to be shepherded. Um, and so that that convinced me that this is a change we need to make in our church, and we did. And it was, there was some painful conflict that happened as a result, but um, that's it is more of a priority now, to where it's a stated and known priority amongst our congregation, and our congregation is united behind it. But it was a battle. It was a really challenging process to get through.
Yeah, it's tough. I have so much compassion for pastors navigating this world right now, and I understand why pastors would be reluctant to step into some of these issues,
Mhm.
just because for so long we've tried to have like a really as broad a tent as we can, um, that kind of avoids talking about a lot of these issues. And if we can just, be gospel centered, we'll just focus on the gospel. A lot of we can make room for a lot of different opinions on things. But I think as some of these issues become more urgent, there's a lot of sheep that are, just people in the pews that are feeling lost. Like,
Mhm.
I need direction. Like, where do we what do I do? My boss is asking me to put pronouns in my bio at work,
Mhm.
and my kid's teacher just sent home a gender unicorn. How do I navigate these
Yeah,
things? And our desire not to cause disunity in the church is oftentimes um, leading to greater disunity down the road
it
when these
is.
things become a front and center thing that is no longer a danger ahead, but a fire that we've got to deal with right now.
Yeah.
And
But I think that people in a church, they don't feel protected, because if they are dealing with this every day, the HR department or diversity, equity, inclusion training at work, or something like that, they're experiencing this in their day-to-day lives. Parents are experiencing it with their kids at school. And when they hear their pastor speak about it, even if there's no new content that they're learning, let's say they already agree with the point of view and they understand it, but if they don't hear their pastor talking out about it, they're going to know that they're not going to have anybody that's got their back. And I want people in my church to know that as you face these challenges, um, that you've got a pastor and you have a church that's got your back. We're going to stand with you,
mhm,
because these things are that important. Because it's not it one of the big things that drives me is the protecting of children, because
mhm,
children are caught up in this web of deceit, and they don't have the knowledge or the discernment to find their way through it, and they need parents that can help them navigate it, and they need churches that can equip them to do that. Winsome mindset puts non-offensiveness in the driver's seat of the discourse, and that
mhm,
is essentially saying, hey, non-believer, hey, person who's in error, you get to drive the discussion. We're going to have the discussion on your terms. You're going to dictate to me what I can say or not say, because my driving interest is not offending you.
mhm,
But the people that are on the left that have bought into this ideology, they're offended by everything. There is nothing that won't offend them. And as long as we're accommodating that, I think the offensive posture will only grow. So it is necessary for there to be at least pastors, a coalition of pastors that'll put up some resistance, for if for no other reason but for the sake of our own congregations. But I do think that
mhm.
there is a hunger within our country for more bold, outspoken truth on these things that will be edifying. So I do think we're at a bit of an inflection point with Christians. Some are being red pilled or black pilled even, but they're they're getting there's an awareness of how urgent and important this is. And they're starting
Mhm.
to say, enough is enough. I've tried the winsome thing and it didn't make anybody happy. It didn't persuade anybody. I didn't win anybody to Christ that way. Um, so I'm just going to start speaking my mind. And that's what I started
Yeah.
doing. I'm like, I'm I'm going to start speaking my mind. I used to twist myself into knots trying to not offend people. And I
Mhm.
realized this is neither effective nor is it godly. It's not ethical. Um, I'm just going to speak my mind and let the chips fall. And what I found is the response has been health and growth and vibrancy, even in my own church. Um, so I think it's a turning point. It's a time for us to decide, and I want us to have a voice in telling other pastors, "You're not alone. We're in this together. We can encourage each other."
Yeah. I like to say that we've become really adept at speaking to be misunderstood in a way that we're one side of the aisle can hear what they want to hear and the other side can hear what they want to hear, and then it's vague enough to not offend but not technically running afoul of scripture that when pressed privately you can retreat back to orthodoxy. No, that's not what I meant.
Right.
um, and I think when we as leaders talk in that way, we are discipling our people that are looking to us to engage in real life in that way, and it's really like kind of I don't know, whatever the chemical reaction that removes the saltiness from something. It's taking the salt out
Yeah.
of our presence in the world.
Hmm.
And yours is not the only church kind of coming to this realization. I've talked to several pastors that are really, I think 2020 was a wake up
Yeah.
call for a lot of people that just recognize that something in our approach is not working. Not in that it's purely pragmatic, but our people are not being fed,
Yes.
and they're desperate just for some direction. I've got my friend Josh Howerton has talked about this a little bit, but he says that there you got three types of people. I think James Wood has kind of touched on this as well. You have three types of people in your congregation. You've got the sheep that are looking to be led. You've got fools that need to be discipled, that they'll kind of believe anything, and you got to be careful because there's people trying to lead them astray. And then that third group is the wolves that are in our churches trying to take the fools and lead them in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
And for too long, we've been kind of catering to the wolves. We've kind of opened the doors, and churches for the unchurched. So come on in, and yeah, sure, you can volunteer. Sure, you can be a part of this life group and that life group, but we're not discipling any of the bad ideas that they're bringing in. And it's time that we start speaking with clarity from the pulpit, from equipping classes, however it looks in your church. We can't just avoid these
Yeah.
topics.
I love that framework, sheep, wolves, and fools. And I think that when you don't give clear messaging from the pulpit, especially, but within the church and the culture and all the different classes, your fools can be recruited into the rank of the wolves, and because they're the mushy middle. People that don't know, could be new believers that just need
Hmm.
instruction. And if we've pre-committed, well, we're not going to teach on XYZ topics because it might give offense, or it might alienate an unbeliever that we're wanting to reach. That might be a particular idol that they have that would trigger them if we talk about it. The silence on that issue that everybody else is talking about will tell them, well, this must not be that important. And then you leave
Mm.
them at the mercy of those who are talking about it, because they're
Yep.
reading about it on the news, they're seeing it on TikTok, YouTube, whatever their social media usage is. It is out there, and the instruction that they're encountering is not limited to the 40 minutes that they're getting in a Sunday sermon. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that I've got 40 minutes to give some truth, and all the rest of the days of the week are they're out there in the world. And the uh my friend Wade Thomas, who's on staff with me, he says like schools or churches, and in the same way, the culture itself is like a church. It is Our world is haunted by spirits, and this is a spiritual war, and there is some battle for the souls of men and women. And there is a need for us to speak truth because they're not getting it here. They're going to get alternative teaching out in the world. And so we leave them vulnerable and unprotected.
Hmm. Yeah, it drives me crazy when evangelical leaders will, criticize people for getting, you're getting all your talking points and all your discipleship from Tucker Carlson, but I'm like, well, then you talk, tell us how to talk about these issues. Don't just avoid it. Tucker's talking about it. That's why people are going to him. What is the Christian response to, transgender
Right.
bathrooms or whatever it is?
But we're getting from
on
on Gospel Coalition, we're getting from them here. We're getting only one side of the message, which is, okay, you have your transgender neighbor, friend, or coworker. Here's how to love them. Here's how to show them the love of Christ. And it always leans in the affirmation direction.
Correct.
But
yeah.
when do we confront them directly? That's not welcome.
Yeah. How do we love the children that are being targeted by that ideology? Oh, yes. And that's a key piece that a lot of our gospel centered friends, seem to leave out. We can see. I use this analogy on Twitter, I think over the weekend. We can see people headed into a burning building, but we don't want to say anything to prevent them because we're afraid of offending the people already in the building who don't want to acknowledge that it's on fire.
Right.
It's like, no, it's at a certain point, you've got to risk offending one group to protect another group. And any sort of approach to this that is solely focused on, the people already in that lifestyle or part of that ideology is just really lacking.
I saw that thread. I thought it was a helpful metaphor. And I noticed somebody, I don't know who it was commenting on it. That was the classic, well, what about this or that person? And the whataboutism comes out. And your response to, I think they were saying something about, well, what about this person you're trying to reach them, but they're caught up in this ideology. And your response to them was, they're in the building already. It's like they're one of the ones that doesn't want to acknowledge the building is on fire. And there has to be somebody that is speaking out, saying, hey, this building is on fire. We need to get people out of here. But there are some that are not open to reason. Yeah. They don't want to listen to it.
Yeah. And I'm encouraged because I feel like people in the pews they've been concerned about this, but they haven't felt the permission to talk about it. And I think that's starting to change. We're at our church, we're doing an equipping class on Carl Trueman's Strange New World book. And it's just been amazing conversation each Sunday morning, as we go chapter by chapter through that. It just feels like people have been given the permission to, we can talk about this at church. This is great. Okay, what about this issue and that issue? And we had a discussion about furries yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, those are the kind of things that we should be able to talk about at church without, worrying about offending, because people need discipling on this. And so I'm hopeful.
Do you teach this class?
I don't. One of our pastors is teaching it and doing a great job with it.
Yeah, you you mentioned furries. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I first heard about that 10 years ago or something like that. And it's something that I remember only because it was weird. And but who would have thought that that's the sort of thing that I'm going to need to know about? And I heard about it because somebody on a message board with Acts 29, they posted a question saying, hey, I've got this couple in my church and this is what they're into. And that opened up a thread, just a lot of guys chiming in and talking about it. And I'm like, I had never heard of this. And I think of Ephesians, I think it's 4 or 5, when he talks about take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. And then right in that same vicinity, he said it is shameful to speak of things they do in secret. So you have two sides of the same coin there, which says that there's some wisdom needed, some discretion needed. Like some things are of a sort that we don't need to know about it. And that
Hmm.
is where a lot of folks that have criticized me have come from. Saying it doesn't matter if some guy down the street is transgender, what is that to me? It has nothing to do with me. Yet at the same time, we don't want to take part in that unfruitful work of darkness, but we need to expose it, not merely to
Hmm.
not merely for his sake, but because this is contagious. This is a mindset that if you go on TikTok, if you go on Twitter, you see that it is everywhere. It is omnipresent. You can reach a certain age where you're not really online that much. You don't really pay attention to Twitter or social media, and you're oblivious. And I imagine if this part of our conversation makes it into the cut of the final, people will be like, "What's a furry? I don't know." But it's like people haven't heard of it, but it's just one of the various kinks that people are into. That when kink is becoming more normal and normal is becoming more on the margin, we have to know about some of these things. It is wise to do so,
Hmm.
and it is foolish to avoid it because they're being influenced by it one way or another.
Yeah. I mean, for the sake of our kids who are, maybe not your kids, you may be a great parent who is keeping them, you know, off of social media. I highly recommend do not let your kids on
Mhm.
social media. But the kids that they're going to school with, or they're on the baseball team with, or, whatever you have them interacting with parents who are not as, vigilant on that, these influences are out there. You need to be aware, and you need to honestly, you need to be talking with your kids on how to, you know, handle this stuff as it comes up. We've had some awkward conversations in the dugout on our son's baseball
Mm.
team, and it's you have to unfortunately have a lot of these conversations younger and younger just due to the world
Yeah.
we're living in. Um, and so
Well,
that's, yeah, again, that's where the church can provide so
yeah.
much
Well, you
discipleship.
mentioned the dangers of social media, and I think that there's a mindset of the social media. So social media is dangerous. Therefore, I want to get my kids off of these social media platforms or never let them get on the social media platforms, as though that resolves the issue. Um, but if you take one kid away from that, but their friend group is all on it, then there is still a social part. Your child might not be in the media part, but the social part is still very much alive. And these things,
Hmm.
they travel, and it's like these sins, they appear in clusters to where you'll have a friend group at school where, in a graduating class of 200 200 kids, you have one particular friend group, and all these girls are saying that they're transgender or they're non-binary or they're bisexual or something because they influence one another. And even if you have one child that isn't on Facebook or Instagram in that group, all of her friends are doing it, and they're reinforcing one another's thoughts. They're affirming one another's uh, fears, and they participate in it together. And these do happen in groups. Like there's I don't know the stats offhand, but it is overwhelmingly obvious that that friend groups of girls in particular, they influence one another. I think the social media part in that environment is more fuel on the fire, but the fire is already there within their relationships.
All right. So this conference is, we're recording this in March of 2023. The conference is next month, April. What are the dates?
April 13th through 15th. I say that I'll check my calendar. Mike, is that right? Yeah, April 13th through 15th.
All right. So I'm going to be speaking. Chase Davis is going to be there. He's also been a guest on the show. Aaron Wren, also a guest. Michael Foster, who looking forward to meeting him and getting to know him. Um, uh, and you're going to be speaking. Anything else anyone needs to know? Where can they go to find more information?
The Probably the simplest thing would be go to our King's Domain website. So it's kings-domain.com, kings-domain.com. And there's a page on there for events, and you can get all the information there. And there's a link to register through Eventbrite. But yeah, King's Domain it's a church-based ministry that we do out of my church here. Kind of like Desiring God is to John Piper's church. King's Domain is our just kind of a media conference content generating wing of our church that is putting on the conference.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I highly encourage people to attend that. It's going to be good. Are you going to be recording the talks?
Yes, we are. We'll have all of them on recorded on video, and should be high quality videos produced for all of the messages. I think 8 or 9 sessions we should have total. So I should be able to post those online after the conference is over.
Excellent. So I'm really looking forward to that. But don't wait for the video. You should come in person, hang out with us. It'll be a lot of good. I was talking with my wife. It's just so refreshing to be with people who kind of get what time it is and recognize the need to do something about it. And so I think that's what I'm looking. As much as I want to hear all those guys speak, I'm looking forward to that time, just with some guys, other brothers and sisters that understand what we're up against, and I think it's going to be a really encouraging time.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we want to build into the schedule we don't want to over program, so we want to have the main sessions, and then lots of lingering breaks between sessions. And the conference is not going to be super big, so I think there's the opportunity to meet people and connect without being overwhelmed by a massive crowd. Will be a great opportunity. That's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most, is meeting other people that see things the same way, that want to connect, and I'm hoping to come away with lots of new friends and people I can connect with. So, Josh, I've loved your work, your podcast, your Twitter presence has been so encouraging, edifying, refreshing for me. Looking forward to getting to speak to you in person and hang out with some of these other guys that are coming. I think it's going to be a blast.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you as well. Before I let you go, I like to end each podcast with a question. What is giving you hope right now?
That is a great question. I would say my hope is theological, that I'm having to apply it to my circumstances, because the circumstances are pretty dire. If we're being really honest about seeing what time it is, there's a lot of things that are greatly concerning to me. So what gives me hope is my confidence that Christ has overcome, that Jesus is not defeated, that the church has seen waves of just really dark turns into sin, and we've seen great awakenings of movements of God throughout history. So knowing that there is an ebb and flow, historical back and forth, as it were, that gives me hope, because I know that God is in control, and that this is a point in time, and that ultimately I don't have my eschatology. Like, I know some people are that think this way, they're post millennial, and that they're really driving hard at that. I'm not sure I'm there yet with post millennialism. I'm more amillennial, but either way, I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic amillennial. It's like, I think people working, God calls people to work, and that He blesses the effort. So that gives me hope, knowing that Christ is supreme. He rules. The name of our church is Christ the King. We've believed this from the beginning. So that gives me a lot of confidence, and that no matter what our present circumstances are, Jesus is King. He reigns. He wins. So that helps me sleep easy at night.
Amen. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I look forward to hanging out with you next month, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Josh.
That's our show for today. Big thanks to Michael Clary for joining me for this conversation. If you'd like to sign up for the conference, you can head to kings-domain.com/events. Again, the dates for that conference are April 13th through 15th, 2023. If you're in the Cincinnati area, I would love to see you there. I'm going to be speaking, as well as Michael Foster, Aaron Wren, Chase Davis, Michael Clary. But beyond just the speakers, it's going to be a great opportunity to connect with other people who recognize the crazy culture we're living through, the cultural forces and changes that are happened, and are really trying to think through how best to respond as Christians. So I think it's going to be really encouraging. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to connecting with some people I only know online, to connect in real life. So if you're going to be there, please send me a message. I would love to connect with you in real life. And if you can't make it, don't worry. I think the talks are going to be recorded. So once those are available, I will be sure to tweet those out so you can see those. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with your friend. Anything you can do to promote the show and to get it to others is really appreciated. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future content. If you listen on podcasts, ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts are always helpful. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.